There's a common misconception online that the most effective way to grow your audience is to have a really, really specific niche. And here's the thing, I'll be honest with you. This can be an effective method for quick and efficient growth, especially on platforms like YouTube, like TikTok, and honestly also on Instagram. The problem with this method isn't necessarily the growth part, it's the sustainability part. The truth is, for the vast majority of creators, there will eventually come a day where you start to feel pretty sick of creating content in the niche where you've been making it. It's really, really hard to keep up making content about the same stuff over and over again for a really long time. And above and beyond that, it's really, really hard to grow a community based on that, because super niche content, especially super niche content that's designed to perform well in search, is inherently transactional content. It's content that people come for to get an answer or a solution to their problem, and then they often end up leaving and not necessarily following that creator in the future. But content that is not necessarily restrained by a specific niche, but is rather designed to connect with a certain kind of person or a certain audience that has a little bit more variety and a bit more personality baked into it, that's the kind of content that actually builds a relationship with a viewer. And it's that kind of content that is conducive to a much more sustainable long-term career as a content creator. However, chances are if you are watching or listening to this episode, you might be a creator who has grown in a specific niche. And you might be starting to feel a little bit limited by that niche, and you're thinking about pivoting. When it comes to switching niches or abandoning the philosophy of having a niche altogether, there are more and less effective ways of going about it. And today, I want to talk you through the right way to pivot, because I want to encourage you and say it is possible. It is possible to expand your horizons, to talk about different topics, and to bring your audience along with you for the ride so that you can start to love creating again and not feel like you're stuck in a box. Trust me, I've been through it when it comes to niche changes and pivots. I've changed my niche probably like 3 to 4 times on YouTube, and I've been able to kind of continue and even see growth beyond those pivots. So I'm going to share more of my personal story today and some tips for how you can pivot the right way so that you can bring your audience along with you for your future evolution. So we're going to dive into all of that on today's episode of the Creator Club podcast. Welcome to the Creator Club. Whether you're trying to pivot your content or you're just trying to optimize your current content for even more reach and further growth, it's really important that you have a solid understanding of your insights and analytics. My favorite way to monitor and interpret my social insights across platforms is with Dash Hudson, the sponsor of the Creator Club podcast. I love Dash Hudson because they have really beautiful and highly visual dashboards, which you can fully customize to make sure that you can surface the metrics that are most important to you and your current strategy. Plus, you can see analytics from all of your platforms at once because you can sync your YouTube, your Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and Facebook all with one Dash Hudson account, so you don't have to switch between analytics platforms to see all of your metrics. Plus, what I love about Dash Hudson most is not only do they keep me up to date with my own personal metrics through their beautiful application, but they also keep me up to date with all of the industry standards. Recently, Dash Hudson released their 2024 benchmarks report. You can get all of the most important information for your particular industry and how it's currently performing across different social platforms when you download this totally free report. So if you want to try out Dash Hudson for yourself, or if you just want to grab their totally free social media benchmarks report for 2024, you can do that at dashhudson.com/Creator Club. And as always, thank you so much to Dash Hudson for making this episode of the Creator Club podcast possible. So let's start off by talking about a really common strategy for changing niches on social media, especially on YouTube, that I personally think is not the right way to go about it. I like to call this strategy the scale then pivot strategy. Okay, so tell me if this sounds familiar, but I know I have definitely come across this before. You watch videos on YouTube all the time about how to grow your channel, and the number one piece of advice is to create content in a really specific niche. Make sure that your titles and your description and your tags are all really, really optimized for SEO, for the YouTube search engine, and you will be able to grow an audience based on your tutorials, based on your how-to videos that are really highly optimized for search. Then, so the strategy tells us, you'll be able to grow an audience, and over time, that audience will come to love you for you, not just for your content. And then one day, once you've hit a critical mass, a certain audience size, maybe 100,000 subscribers, for example, then you'll be able to expand your content. You'll be able to pivot into vlogging, into travel, into whatever it is you're most passionate about, and your audience will come along for the ride because they got to know you through your niche content. That is the strategy. That is the promise that I clung to through my early days growing on YouTube, because I told myself I would grow my channel by making lots of tutorials. I would get my videos in search as much as possible, and I would get lots of people to come and watch me, and eventually they would be excited to watch my vlogs. Unfortunately, though, this does not work. And it doesn't work for a very key reason. Growing an audience is all about setting expectations and building trust, particularly around what kind of content you're going to post. And a lot of times when we grow our YouTube channels or other platforms around really specific searchable niche content, we're setting the expectation with our audience that they can watch one of our videos, get everything they need to know within the confines of that single video, and then walk away and apply their learning and never have to watch a video from us again. That's kind of the nature of the connection that you have with viewers when you really heavily target search traffic. It ends up being very transactional, which I mentioned before. You can kind of picture how this interaction goes down, right? Somebody opens up their laptop, they go to youtube.com and they search how to add text to a TikTok. And they come across a video from yours truly, who shows them within just 3 short minutes how to add that text on top of their TikTok video. They find out how, they X out of that YouTube tab, and they go ahead and actually do that thing. They add the text to their TikTok. This isn't probably going to lead to people subscribing, and this certainly isn't going to lead to people watching my vlogs, because I taught them what they needed to know, and then they left and, applied that knowledge. And while that is a good way to get views and it's a good way to help people, obviously I'm sure these types of videos are very useful, it's not necessarily a good way to actually grow a community that's going to follow you through your future evolutions and come with you through potential future pivots. Instead of creating this content that, yes, will be very efficient at getting you views quite quickly through the search engine, you actually want to focus on creating content that, while yes, it may lead to slower growth, it will actually lead to you having more of a genuine relationship with your viewers. So obviously, if you were starting from scratch, you would want to apply this advice by focusing on creating relationship-based videos from the start, meaning videos that are based in storytelling or in sharing advice or personal experiences. These are the kind of things that help you to build a relationship while also providing value. And these are the kind of videos that are more likely to show up on the homepage of YouTube rather than, in search results. This is actually a strategy that I did try to implement myself. If you've been along for my journey, you'll know that back in the summer of 2021, I experienced some pretty serious burnout, and I was just feeling like I couldn't make another social media strategy, particularly Instagram strategy video, if I tried. And I've always loved creating for YouTube, and I always wanted to be able to create vlogs, share more personal content, and really connect with my viewers. So I decided, you know what? I've done the scale thing. It's time to pivot. So this was probably like July, August of 2021. I basically made a video being like, things are changing around here. And then I went from posting weekly videos on how to grow on Instagram and like Instagram strategy advice to posting weekly videos about van life and work from home outfits and like day in my life videos and morning routines and videos about trying journaling and like other sort of self-care topics. Those videos completely flopped. Even to this day, they like are just now kind of cracking 1,000 views each, and they were posted 3 years ago, which is wild. So I very quickly had a reality check moment where I realized that just because I had scaled in this niche does not mean that I'd be able to pivot and see similar results in a different niche. And actually starting to create new content was pretty much like starting from scratch, maybe even worse, because I had an existing audience who were seeing the videos that I was posting in their subscription box and not clicking on them because that's not what they had signed up for. And that was giving me a very low click-through rate, and therefore basically telling the algorithm, don't show these videos to anybody because nobody will click on them. But the truth is, it's just, maybe somebody would, but not my existing audience, right? So I had a very much, come to Jesus moment with that in 2021, where I was like, you can't just scale and then pivot, because people aren't necessarily going to come along with you if you've made content about something completely different and now you're doing a 180 and trying something new. Because the truth is, through my Instagram strategy content, I hadn't fully taken advantage of the opportunity to build that relationship with my viewer. I had just been trying to be as succinct and to the point and searchable as possible, which was helping me to get views, and it was helping to grow my subscriber count, but it wasn't necessarily actually developing that relationship between me and my viewer. But if you are tuning into this episode, chances are you aren't starting from scratch. You're thinking about how you can pivot from your current situation to expand your subject matter or talk about something new altogether. So how can you do that? It's obviously not going to be through the scale then pivot strategy that I just talked about, because time and time again, we've seen how that doesn't work so well. So what can you do instead? Well, I want to introduce you to my alternate strategy, the strategy that I would like to propose that you try, and one that I've been implementing over the last little while, and that is balancing content for you and your audience. So I like to call it the creator audience balance strategy. There's really two different approaches that you can take. One is often called the one for me, one for them approach. And it's something that you can consider, but I do think it has its limitations. So the way the one for me, one for them approach works is that half of the content you make is designed to get your audience's attention. It's designed to probably continue along the same path that your previous niche did and provide the content that the algorithm is telling you that your audience wants and that, your audience tends to respond to most. So going back to my little 2021 story, the equivalent of this would be if I had made, every other week a video about Instagram strategy and the alternating week just a vlog or day in the life video. So you can see how that is like one for them, one for me. I give one to my audience that wants this particular niche, or I give one to the algorithm that really, promotes this type of video when I make it. And then I make one video that I just want to make that makes me feel creatively fulfilled. This is an approach to being able to create content half the time that you just genuinely love and you have fun doing. But the truth is, when you do this, you kind of need to accept that those for you videos probably aren't going to perform that well. And your wider audience might not ever end up really starting to watch those videos or, become interested in those videos because they are just so drastically different than the for them content that you're making. So by doing the one for them, one for me, you might inadvertently end up kind of developing two parallel audiences that kind of never meet, because you'll have some people that watch the for them content, and then you might have a small group of people that watch the for me content, but they might not actually be interested in the other if it's, too different. So it's something that you can do to kind of satisfy your own creative longings in a way, to make you fulfilled about what you're creating, but it's not necessarily a great strategy for being able to eventually convert your audience into the type of audience that's interested in what you really want to create. So the second way of approaching this creator audience balance that I really want to encourage you to try out is really trying to slowly but surely integrate more of you into the for them content. And the way you do this is by boiling the frog. Let me introduce you to a very grim and grisly metaphor, but I think it's one that helps to explain this concept. So you might have heard the old saying, which is questionable in its scientific accuracy, but it goes like this. If you put a frog into boiling water, it will jump out because obviously it's painful and it doesn't want to be in there. But if you put a frog into cool water and you slowly heat it up over a long enough period of time, the frog will stay in until the water is boiling. Because essentially it doesn't notice this very, very gradual change. This is the theory that you want to apply to how you pivot your content to bring your audience along for the ride. But thankfully, we're not boiling anyone. We're just adapting them to new content that we want to be posting and that we're more excited about. Basically, if you make a really sudden and drastic pivot like I did back in the summer of 2021, your audience is going to fall off because they're going to be like, what is this? I didn't sign up for this. I don't even know what she's talking about. Van life? I'm here for Instagram tips. So instead, you want to take a really slow and steady approach to bring your audience along for the change. And you can do this, like I was saying, by integrating more of you and your personality into videos that you're already optimizing for the algorithm. So let's talk some tangible tips for doing this. So for one, I want you to change your mindset from optimizing for search engines to really optimizing for people, and secondarily for recommendations algorithms. Like I was saying, if you have been basically SEOing the heck out of your content and just trying to get your stuff to show up in search engines so that people can find you that way, that does, well, it helps you grow. It does tend to lead to more transactional relationships and kind of like not really a community feeling, right? With your viewers, it's more people getting what they need and then leaving. So instead of kind of making your content for search engines, think about how you can make your content for people. So the biggest way you can do this, especially on YouTube, is by changing the way you write your titles from being very like kind of clear and SEO optimized and full of keywords and like the kind of thing somebody would type into search, and instead writing it like a saucy headline, like something that's really attention grabbing, that's written the way that you would talk to a friend or the way that you would tee up a really interesting story. So think about making that transition. Instead of being focused on search, we're focused on people. Second, you want to start incorporating a little bit of yourself and your personality into the videos that you make that are optimized. So even though, yes, we're now optimizing for the homepage, for recommendations, rather than for search, we're still going to be making videos that are the type of videos that we know our audience is going to click on. So in my example, it would be Instagram strategy videos. We know that's what my audience is coming for, so that's what I'm going to post. But within those videos that are made for my audience, I'm going to start to just include a little dash of my personality. One really practical example I can give you is the coffee chat series that I do on my YouTube channel. So if you don't watch my YouTube channel, I make videos every so often that are part of my Coffee Chats with Katie series, where I talk about a social media marketing strategy or kind of theory that I've come across recently that I think is interesting and that I want to share. But at the beginning of those videos, after I do my kind of 20-second intro to tee up the concept and draw people in, I'll pause for a minute and I'll say, welcome back to Coffee Chats with Katie. This week I'm drinking a, iced oat milk latte with vanilla syrup. I love these for when it's warm outside. It's my favorite coffee drink. Let me know in the comments what you're drinking. And then I'll dive into the actual, content. So this gives me, even just 15 seconds to introduce a little bit of myself and my personality, even if it's as simple as, my favorite type of coffee drink, because it opens that window for relatability. It gives people who are watching an opportunity to be like, oh, I'm also an oat milk latte girly. Like, that's so fun. That's something that we connect on. And it starts to build that relationship. But it's not enough of a diversion that it's going to make people click away from your video and not continue to watch. Because that's ultimately the concern when you start to incorporate more of your personality. You don't want to include too much rambling and, tangential information that people click away and then your view duration plummets. But you also don't want to be so concise and so efficient that you never have a chance to let your personality shine through. So ultimately, it is a really, really delicate balance that you need to strike as a creator between being succinct, giving people what they came for, what they clicked on your video for, but also taking your opportunity while you have their attention to let your own personality shine through. Because it's through doing that you're actually going to be able to build a relationship with your viewer and have that growth happen that was promised you through that scale then pivot strategy of people coming to love you for you and not just for your content. That can only happen if you take your opportunity to share those little rays of your personality, coming through the cloud of content. And you have to be careful about how you do it, because you can't just, spend 5 minutes doing a completely unrelated intro to what the topic of your video actually is. But you don't want to be so efficient and so fast and so pacey with your video that you don't even get a chance to introduce who you are and why people should be invested in you. It's going to be a balance, and it's going to take experimentation to see how much of yourself you can insert in your content and still keep people engaged and still be able to deliver on what you promised. But taking a few seconds here and there to share a joke or an anecdote, or even telling a personal story that backs up the topic that you were already talking about, are all great ways to start to introduce yourself and your personality to your audience more. And as time goes on, you'll be able to increase that amount of personality, increase the temperature so that people adapt to it, they get used to it, and they won't even necessarily realize that over time the videos become more about you and what you want to share than they are about the topic that you originally promised. And maybe someday, a year or 2 years down the line, you'll be able to post that vlog or post that video in your new niche. But it takes time, and it takes that dedication and investment of slowly increasing that temperature on your personality, on your new subject matter, to get people invested in it, to really take your existing audience and bring them along for that pivot. Really, I just want to leave you with the encouragement that you don't have to be stuck in what you're creating right now forever. You do have the opportunity to pivot and to evolve. It just might take some patience, some dedication, and some creativity if you want to bring your existing audience along for the ride with you. As you're planning this pivot, as you're planning this change in your content strategy, it's important that you let metrics guide you so that you can make the most informed decisions possible about the new content that you're going to be creating. And my favorite way to keep an eye on my social media metrics is with Dash Hudson, the sponsor of the Creator Club podcast. So make sure you go to dashhudson.com/Creator Club if you want to check it out, or if you want to download their free 2024 benchmarks report. That'll all be linked in the show notes. And as always, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in to the Creator Club podcast. I truly, truly wish you all the best on your journey as it comes to evolving as a creator, pivoting, expanding your horizons, because as much as it really takes time and it can feel frustrating, it can feel impossible sometimes, I can promise you it's so worth it, because you'll feel so much more excited and inspired and satisfied with the work that you're doing on the other side of it. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. And I will catch you in next week's episode of the Creator Club podcast. Bye.